All right, so we should be recording now. So again, to Amy's point, we just wanted to use this session as a Q&A for you. So mostly the focus is around the questions that you have regarding applying to this internship. It doesn't need to be a bunch of like us talking. It could be more just open to you. But I also have some like kind of commonly asked questions from the students that I've already met with. So what I wanted to first focus on is that school certification form. So again, that link in the chat, the Google Doc, is so you can provide your name and school ID, because Aimee is working closely with Steve Neer, our registrar, and we're just going to send those forms in one big email so that he can complete those. And then I don't know if he would email them back to you or if we would email them back to you, but that's why we need your official NOU email address, because we're going to need, we can't send it to a Gmail or something like that if it's completed by the registrar's office. It's going to need to go to your official NOU account. So make sure that you fill out that first and foremost. The school certification form does not require you to complete any component of it. It says to sign at the bottom, but that's only if you are unable to secure the school's information that's filled out at the top. So that shouldn't be the case for anybody here. We should be able to submit your forms because hopefully now we have your information in that Google Doc. And so then we can get that back for you, and you would not need to sign that document. You would just upload the signed version from the registrar's office to your application. That program term acknowledgement is the other form that is attached to that application. So make sure you print that out, initial all the parts that it wants you to initial, sign that and scan it. I know there is some discussion around like some people might have software that allows them to sign online. I would encourage you guys to print it out, as obnoxious as that is. And if you need to, I at least until a couple months ago, didn't have access to a printer or a scanner. So I get it if it's a little inconvenient. But I do think that that's probably the best means of doing that, because they want your official signature on file. You want a signature that's gonna reflect what your signature actually looks like, right? So that if they go to compare it to your ID or other documents like that, you want it to match up. And so with that, those are sort of the two forms, but there's also the application process. I want to open it up for questions from the crowd, but I also can keep talking at you if you would like. So anybody want to send any questions, unmute and ask questions, put them in the chat, whatever's most comfortable. Don't feel any pressure, but the real goal here is to help you guys. It's not about me just talking through, but I can also continue to talk through the process if that's helpful. So
has anyone already applied prior to this year for the FBI internship? Or is this all your first time? You can go ahead and give a thumbs up if it's your first time in the reactions.
I got halfway through the application process before it closed because I was late joining into NLU.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's so common. That's why we really wanted to reach out to a group of students early on. We do start later or fall than most other universities. So it's been quite tricky to get our students into this program, and we're hoping that you guys are going to be successful this time around.
All right, so what I will do is I'll kind of share this little document that I was working on that kind of outlines. Can you guys see my screen? Are you good? Is it really small?
Yes, we can see it, but it's really, yeah.
It is really small. Don't be afraid, y'all. Tell me what's going on. All right, let's see. That should help. All right, so in terms of eligibility, I did want to make sure people understood there is language in the application around if you are a June graduate, the program actually starts in June. So it would want you to be continuing on into graduate school for you to be eligible to complete that application. So ideally, hopefully none of you are June grads, and so we're A-okay and we don't have to worry about that. But I do know that I had connected with a couple folks who were June grads, so I wanted to put that out there. If you are a June grad and you're just interested in other FBI opportunities, there's definitely, they have a collegiate hiring initiative that they do, so it might make sense to kind of focus on, excuse me, jobs to apply for, as opposed to this internship program. And then they're ideally looking for, well, not ideally, they explicitly say, right, that they're looking for sophomore level students and above. So for NOU purposes, that would be about 3/4 worth of credits, which would be about 45 credits. So assuming you have more than 45 credits, but you're not going to graduate in June, you're going to graduate after June, you should be good to go in terms of eligibility. Does anybody have any questions about eligibility? And I can't see the chat, so if somebody chats one, if somebody can let me know. So we just talked about the program term acknowledgement form. Again, for those folks that joined a little late, print them out. Well, print out the program term acknowledgement form, initial, sign. If you've completed the Google Doc link for that school certification form, we're gonna submit that to the registrar's office. So we're gonna get you a copy of that form completed by the registrar. And so you should not have that to worry about. As long as we have your name, your NLU ID, and your NLU email address, we should be able to help process that for you. Any questions about those two forms that are connected with the application? I think I saw something in the chat. Okay.
Hold on, we had a question in the chat, 1 second. Or maybe not, maybe it was me. Just so everyone knows, if you are just joining us, there is a Google Doc link in the chat. Please go in and enter your information so that we can help provide you the school certification form.
All right. Okay, sorry. And then, so the application, as you guys may have seen that email, I sent out the email to a few students, and the only links that were included were the program form, the program term acknowledgement, and the school certification form. Obviously, there's more to the application than that. So I did include the link here for the actual application. And I can show you guys, let me share what that looks like. Let's see. Oh, that's not what I'm looking for. Here we go. Nope. Where'd it go? Okay. Or maybe I didn't. All right. So here's what the page will look like when you guys get there. And then you'll see this honors internship program apply here button. That'll be what you'll want to click on to actually, so once you get here, this is really the application, right? So it's going to ask you for, you know, pretty much all the standard job information that you could be expected to provide for an application. But it's also, I believe it asks for, let me share again my little Word doc. It asks for the two forms that we've talked about a million times at this point, right? It's also going to ask for your resume. So if you're connected with a career advisor at NLU, make sure that you're working with them to that you feel the most confident possible about the resume that you're submitting. You want it to be really straightforward, really clean. This is the FBI, right? So we don't want to have a lot of like frivolous things on our resume. It's not the time to use colorful font or things like that, right? We want to have a really streamlined, really clear and concise resume to present. So I really like encourage you to lean on. I'm the career advisor for Pathways students in Chicago in criminal justice. I know Olivia's on this call, and she's working with our Helix Online students. So if you have a career advisor, or if you're a Wheeling campus student, that would be Bushra Sarkar. So reach out to those folks and make sure that you're asking for assistance with that resume if you feel like you need it. If you feel really confident in it, you know, go for it. But I encourage you to use us as a resource, because that's really what we're here for. You'll do that completed application. Aimee, did you want to hop in?
Yeah, I just want to say that if you go to USA Jobs, they also have in their system a way to create your resume through them, and that's very helpful for any kind of government position as well.
Great point, Aimee, because government jobs do look for a different sort of formatting, so that may work to your advantage for sure, to go onto USA Jobs. The application that we just looked at online, obviously you'll need to complete that, and that is where you'll have the opportunity to upload those forms that we talked about, right? The school certification form and the program term acknowledgement form. It also, as I understand it, and I'm only getting this information from students who have been clicking through and actually completing the application, it does ask for transcripts, I believe. So I believe that it is only asking for your unofficial transcript. At this time, I assume there is a possibility that they will ask for one official transcript as you get further along in the process. But as of right now, all you need is your unofficial, and your unofficial transcript can be found under your student portal. So there's a way to log into your student portal and download your unofficial transcript, save it, and then upload it into your application. Does anybody have any questions about the pieces of the application, or maybe specifically any transcript questions?
You may have mentioned it earlier, but for those of us who are doing online, is there anybody in particular we should be looking to in terms of reference? I know right now I'm talking to Veronica about my main my main line, but would she be the same person to talk to?
Veronica might be a perfect resource to ask specifically who your career advisor is. I would guess that it might be Olivia, but I don't want to say that because the advisors in that department can get a little tricky.
I think it is, because I think she was the one that sent me the email. So yeah.
Yes, okay. I will jump in. Veronica is your academic advisor, and so I'm your career advisor. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Olivia. So yes, Olivia would be the person to connect with. So Olivia, if you want to, well, you sent out the email, but drop your email in the chat so that you guys can connect and have an appointment about that resume, because that's awesome, or about the process in general. Beautiful. Making connections, y'all. Okay. And then, so the last piece that I believe is optional, again, from what I've been told, is a cover letter, right? So this is another moment where it would be a great idea to connect with a career advisor about your cover letter. This is a very tricky kind of cover letter to write, because there's not really a robust job description to pull on from the posting, right? Because there's a lot of different places they could send you if you're open to opportunities outside of Chicago, right? They don't know exactly what department you're going to be in or what you're going to be doing. So they kind of just have a broad explanation of what they're looking for in candidates, which I should be able to pull up. Let's see. So here again is just like that website with the internship listed on it here. And if you open this up a little bit, what I've been kind of helping students focus on is thinking about these candidate skills, right? So, I mean, some of these things, like if you have a finance background or you have a bunch of foreign languages, like absolutely highlight all this stuff too, if you've got it. But I know that not all of my students have all of those things, which is totally fine. I think that then what we want to focus on instead is these skills, right? And as with any cover letter, you want to make sure that you're providing really specific examples. You know, you're not going to have any equivalent experiences, right, to working with the FBI if you've never worked with the FBI before. That's okay, right? They just want to know that you can, you know, make solid decisions, that you have strong communication skills. So give us examples of those times that you've done that. Doesn't necessarily even have to have been at a job. It could have been in a school project. It could have been in some volunteering work that you're doing. Anytime that kind of showed some of these different skills, I would usually tell people to pick 2 or 3 of these and then highlight those in the body of their cover letter. Again, the cover letter is optional, so you really want to make it strong, right? If it's not going to tell the best story about you and really convince them that you're the right choice, then honestly, just to be totally frank, you might have just kept it off the application altogether, right? So if you're not willing to go through the time to make that appointment and have a second set of eyes on it, I would say maybe don't submit it. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion, but you want to get as much help as possible, because you're either talking yourself out of or talking yourself into something, right? So you don't want to be the person that talks themselves out of something that their resume and application might have gotten them that next step, and the cover letter just doesn't quite align with what they're looking for, or doesn't kind of speak specifically enough to what you bring to the table when it comes to something like that. So really be mindful. Anything that's optional on application, got to knock it out of the park. Otherwise, you know, maybe better to have left it off. So just make sure you're thinking about that. And then I know, so when it comes to, and then, oh, also, so I should plug, we have a cover letter guide on the CareerBridge website. So let me drop this in the chat. To make sure me and opening the chat when I'm sharing my screen are not always best friends. Let's do everyone. Okay, so that helps. That has the cover letter guide, resume guide. So, you know, if you want to go rogue, you want to do it without your career advisor, I don't advise it, but it's okay. No judgment. Make sure you use those online tools. Make sure you're looking at your resume to make sure it matches up, and that your cover letter is organized and addressed in a way that you would expect it to be addressed, right? Like, this is not the place to not have the date and the address on your cover letter. I know that's really formal, but it's also the FBI, right? This is government. We want to have things as formal as possible, because that's going to work in your best interest overall. So once again, I want to open it up to you guys for questions, because again, it's really supposed to be about seeing what hiccups. Has anybody, okay, maybe thumbs up if you actually started the application process. Okay. I'm like, I think there should be another thumb, but it's okay. I'm not gonna call folks out. Okay, because I got some of this information from someone who didn't give me a thumbs up just now, but that's fine. No hard feelings. So I mean, as you guys work through the application, let me drop my email in the chat in case folks have questions. But again, I'm gonna leave the floor open. I don't intend to keep you guys forever, but I also want to make sure it's meaningful and that you guys are really getting the information that you need when it comes to this. The application deadline is the 30th, right? So you've got some time, but at the same time, I'm sure the competition, right? They're going to use your school address as where they think they'll place you, right? So we are a Chicago, if you use NLU's Chicago campus, right? There's a Chicago location for the FBI. And so I expect that because Chicago is highly populated, right, there's going to be other people at other schools in Chicago also applying for the same internship. So I doubt that there are probably as many spots as we would want there to be here locally. So if you're not in the position to kind of pick up everything and move across the country for the summer to do this internship, I would encourage you to get your application in as soon as possible so that you make sure that you put yourself at the best advantage for securing those spots that are available. Any questions from the crowd for this Q&A?
Is there like an acceptance rate for the FBI's program?
That's a really great question.
So we don't have that data. I'm actually waiting. We have a new point of contact through the FBI. So I'm waiting to actually have a meeting one-on-one with them. We have had them on campus in previous years, but it's always been after this application process had taken place.
And
I have already mentioned it, but do you know the turnaround time for, once you apply, when is there a set date by which they would announce it?
So everybody will find out by November. And even if you're denied, they do give you a response, which is very nice because some people don't tell you and you're wondering and waiting and trying to call them. So yeah, they will send a letter to other people that are declined and also get a hold of people that have been offered. And I think
Thank
there was
you.
another question.
I just want to ask, so I read, because there are a few forums for the program where people are saying that their background check took so long that they had to reapply for like next year.
I mean, it's very possible. I know that they do a very intensive background check. If you live in a building, they're going to ask neighbors. But this is the same kind of process that the police department does as well, or any major government is going to do, program is going to do that as well. That's why it's really important. The sooner you can get your resume in, the faster they can start doing that background check.
Okay.
And
What
make
type
sure.
of work?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh. Go ahead, Ricardo.
What type of work will we be doing in the internship?
So from what I understand, you do a little bit of everything in each of the departments, which is great. They're sort of, they get your feedback on what you're interested in, but they also want to give you an idea of what the whole department, like all the departments do through the program.
That's the nice thing, right? It's this large coordinated internship. So I'm assuming, so I did an internship when I was in college in a prosecutor's office. And so we did like a jail tour at some point. So I'm assuming there are some activities, right, where they do with like a large group of interns, right? And then there
Yes.
are individual things that you're doing with those individual departments as well. So you kind of get the benefit of being in a large internship program because you'll have access to more resources and more things than some of those places that only look for one intern a year or something like that.
And one of the great things too is if you know, like you go through this whole process and it turns out that they didn't have enough time to review your resume, you still have everything ready for the following year. So just hold on to it, put it in a file. They always put it on their calendar. It's always in August to September that they have their internship. So that way next year in August, you just reach out to Jeanne or I, we get you the form refilled out, you have the application, everything ready to go, and you can send it in on that very first day.
Absolutely. And I know someone spoke to kind of like the background check process. So obviously, you know, everything's going to be different for different folks, but if you've like lived in a bunch of different states and things like that, and you've kind of been, you know, in different places at different times, those can be occasionally the background checks that may take a little bit more time, right? Because they kind of have to trace you through all the different addresses and locations that you've been. And just make sure, I'm sure there's some information that they're trying to capture in the application, right? Around work history, around like places that you've lived in order to conduct those backgrounds. So just make sure you're really paying attention to detail, right? Make sure you're getting the like apartment number correct of your, you know, previous addresses, like little things like that. I know that seems silly, but like those little things can be hiccups and can derail the whole process, right? So you just want to really dot your I's and cross your T's when it comes to things like that. And similarly, like if they ask for like employment history, and I know this might kind of get me in trouble, but you know, you want to make sure anything that you want to document every job that you've completed tax forms for that is what I want to say about that.
And one more thing, should you get a lot, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to know also, will the person also be interviewed by a few people and asked a few questions once they are considered to be accepted for the program?
Yes. I believe that you even have to do a lie detector test.
I think there is a sign off for polygraph. Let's go to the, as my brother would say, let's go to the tape. Let's go look at the actual.
While Jeannie's pulling that up, I also want to say if anyone should get a letter saying they've been declined, please reach out and ask them what that reason is, because if you know the reason, that gives you, you know, a whole year to make those adjustments, tweak the resume, and make sure everything is clear for the next round.
Okay, so this is key requirements. We kind of went through that in terms of eligibility. Must be able to obtain that top secret security clearance. Background investigation.
It does say polygraph right up there.
Yes.
In the first paragraph, pass a polygraph examination.
Yes. As well as drug testing as well. So something also to be mindful of, all of us. Yes, pass polygraph examination, pass urinalysis drug test, and credit as well as criminal history when it comes to something like that.
When I was reading the forums of the people who actually passed and they got into the program, they said for the polygraph that there can always be false positives because that's typically what a polygraph. And they said it's best to just try to calm every single nerve that you have prior, because if you don't, then you could accidentally spike.
Yeah, I mean, I am in no way a polygraph expert, so I'm not even going to put my foot in my mouth on that one. But yeah, I'm sure there's lots of information, good resources out there in terms of what a polygraph tests for. I do know they're not admissible in court, but I do know that lots of law enforcement agencies love to use them. So it's I also think for somebody personally that can occasionally get a little anxiety or get a little stressed out about a new process, like polygraph seems really intimidating. So I think for me, the more I would know, right, about how it works and what it's measuring and, what's supposed to happen, it's one of those things where you can kind of mitigate some of your stress with a little education around what it looks like, what a typical one does, that kind of thing might help relieve some nerves around that. Because I think it'll be hard for me to be pretty calm when people strapped up a bunch of stuff to me and asked me a bunch of questions and in a small room. So, but yeah, be mindful of the drug testing background check. Another question. Yes.
Yes. How far back into the work history should a person go? Because I've done quite a few like contracting positions and independent and freelancing positions, and I just in the past. So how far back on the resume would the FBI want the person to detail?
Okay, I would say
I'm looking
7
at you.
years.
Okay.
I tend to go with 7 years, especially with the government, because they're going to be looking through every single job. If it was a normal resume, it would be different. I would probably keep it to like a page to maybe 2 pages, but definitely for the government, I would go back 7 years.
Okay.
And sometimes too, when they ask you on those applications, when you're in the section that asks you to fill every single, and they're like, don't spare any 2 months you were employed. We want all of it, right? There's usually at the top of that section a specification about how long they want you to go back. So I know I've worked with folks that did like TSA applications through the airport, and it would, I think, typically be about 10 years. But that's different than your resume that you're submitting, right? So maybe follow that 7 years for the resume, but obviously whatever they specify at the top of that work history part of the application, just pay real close attention to that, because to Amy's point, you don't want to give any extra information because that's just more that they have to do background checks about. That's just more employment history they have to verify. So you want to kind of stay to the letter of the law in terms of like how far back they want you to go.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Oh, Olivia had a question about how long should a resume be if it goes back 7 years. Uh-oh, Aimee, you're still muted. Happens to the best of us.
Every time, I swear. Again, if you're doing a resume just on paper, it's going to seem long. But I think if you go through USA Jobs, it gives you a different platform in which to stylize the information, because again, on USA Jobs, they're going to be asking for a continuous stream of jobs in the past. But again, just like Jeanne had mentioned earlier, if it's on the website itself in the application part, they're going to tell you to start with your most recent and go back in time, and usually they give you a year there.
Just wanted to share something in the chat. Let's see. So that's a little bit of like how to build a resume at USA Jobs. But again, you can go to USA Jobs and just put in search, how do I create a resume? And it will help. Now sometimes it'll actually create it within, there's an option to create it within USA Jobs. So you don't necessarily have to do that if that's not, but here's another link about what they would want included in a federal resume. I do think it's worth it to note that like, this is an undergraduate internship opportunity, right? So I don't necessarily think they're gonna hold your resumes to the standard of folks applying for federal jobs. But it's also good to have it at the ready, right? If for some reason, if you get the internship and then you're eligible for, you know, employment long-term with the FBI, you do want to have your resume in that kind of formatting. So it's probably a good thing to kind of like look at now and just have a sense of what they're looking for when it comes to, because government resumes usually expect a lot more information and a lot further in the past than typical business organizations, other things like that. And I will also, because I have, if at this point everybody's filled out the Google Doc, I believe, let me check and make sure that I have. So I think I do have folks in the Google Doc. And so that means I'll be able to kind of, the outline that I kind of showed you guys for a second and some of these links that we've shared, I can just compile that into a document and send it out as an email as well, along with the recording, so that you guys have access. I know it's hard to like kind of copy and paste all these links, especially if you're doing other things out in the world. So we'll definitely get all that in order so that we can send that out to you guys and you have that available. Actually, let me see, hold on. I feel like I'm missing. I will let you know who I have in the Google Doc. Right now I have Malaysia, Ricardo, Natalie, and Maralba. I apologize if I butchered your name. If you are not included on that list, if you would be so kind as to, I'll put that Google Doc link in one more time. And then again, I can also hang out for questions if folks wanna ask questions. We can stop the recording. And then if anybody has additional questions, we can take it from there. Does that sound good to folks? All right, so let me go ahead and stop the recording.